From a pitch that was about to make the dragons explode with anger to the dragons fighting amongst themselves, these are Dragon's Den's most cringeworthy moments. You know how weight loss is one of those sizzling hot topics, right? Well, there was this dietitian who came up with a pitch, and the dragons were turning as red as a tomato by the end. They were all like, "How on earth are you going to make money with this dietitian's plan?" And they never got the answer. Instead, the pitcher, Todd Schneider, bombarded them with a whole bunch of fancy weight loss jargon, and the dragons were just about ready to rip their hair out. The dragons kept asking, but Todd just kept going and going, talking about all these complex things, and the dragons were like, "Wait, what? Speak English, man." In the end, you could practically see the steam coming out of the dragons' ears. They were ready to explode, and the humiliation was downright cringy. But I can't talk about cringe situations and not mention the French entrepreneur Sylvain, who had quite the roller coaster ride in the den. He came up with a 3D printing venture where he'd print stuff for clients. And, well, Peter Jones didn't hold back and straight up called the whole thing bizarre. Sylvain tried to defend his product, but Jones wasn't having any of it. He pointed out that the company was just selling 3D printing capability without any extra value. Jones even remarked that he could just buy the printer himself, hire someone for 40,000 Canadian dollars, and own the whole shebang. But our French friend didn't back down. He clarified that he wasn't selling the printer itself, but if he did, it would cost 70,000. Still, Jones wasn't impressed and dropped another bombshell saying, "Hey, you're asking for 80,000 for 15% of a business that doesn't even exist yet. I could easily buy the printer and do it all myself." You can imagine the stunned silence and disbelief in the den. Jones had delivered the final blow, making it clear that he didn't need Sylvain's business after all. It was a brutal showdown, and Sylvain was left with his dreams shattered. But even that wasn't as bad as this next one. I mean, Fiona Houston's pitch with her seaweed business was a ruthless moment in the den. Jones couldn't hide his disappointment, and he described it as one of the worst experiences he'd ever had on the show. At first, the business looked promising and profitable, with Fiona pitching her superfood seasoning as a salt alternative. She asked for a staggering $100K for just 3% equity, dreaming of building a $7 million export brand. But things quickly went south as Fiona struggled to handle criticism and became defensive with the dragons. You know, they can be tough cookies sometimes. Peter, always the sharp one, got right down to business. He was intrigued by the pitch and immediately evaluated the business at $3 million. But when he asked about the company's earnings, things got tricky. Fiona claimed they made $200,000 in the last 6 months, but after a heated discussion, it was revealed that the company actually made zero profit. Can you imagine the shock on everyone's faces? Zero profits after all that hype. Peter wasn't holding back. He schooled Fiona about gross profit and how important it is to keep costs below the selling price. The whole concept was put into question, and he wondered if the $3 million valuation was just plain bizarre. Deborah Medin, one of the other dragons, couldn't help but ask if Fiona came looking for a fight. It was getting intense in there. The pitch started with so much promise, but it all crumbled in no time, and as cringe as that sounds, it still wasn't as bad as the time Peter went after an entrepreneur. You won't believe what happened when Gerard Tomnay tried to pitch his business to Jones. The idea behind the knowledge sounded intriguing. It was a phone service that offered insider info on London's backstreets straight from taxi drivers. But Peter wanted to put it to the test before considering any investment. Gerard was seeking $150,000 for a 30% stake in his company, and he thought a practical demonstration would win over the dragons. So, he offered them a chance to try out the service on a mobile phone. But things took a rocky turn right from the start. The calls were costing $1 per minute, and when Peter tried to use the service, disaster struck. An automated message kept repeating, "Please wait," while his bill was creeping up. Peter, being the no-nonsense dragon he is, couldn't hold back his frustration. He said, "Here I am, stuck in London in the pouring rain, and I've already spent £1.50 on your service with nothing to show for it. I'm never going to call you again because it just doesn't work." Ouch. There was an awkward silence in the den, as Gerard's hopes of impressing the dragons went down the drain. It was definitely not the outcome he was expecting, and it was extremely cringe to watch. I mean, I got secondhand embarrassment from the whole thing. Speaking of embarrassing moments, though, do you remember the pitch for direct wholesale? Yep, you guessed it. I'm talking about Fahim Badul's pitch in the den. He came in all eager to get funds for his franchise restaurant and food business, but things took a disastrous turn right from the start. His pitch was a mess, and it was so difficult to follow and understand what he was saying. He got lost in his own words and forgot to address the dragon's concerns altogether. To make matters worse, Fahim didn't even mention the most crucial details, the amount of investment he needed, and the percentage of equity he was willing to give. I mean, those are important things to include in a pitch, right? As he rambled on, the pitch just got more and more confusing, and the dragons were scratching their heads trying to make sense of it. In the end, they couldn't handle the confusion anymore, and Fahim left the den empty-handed, with the dragons all opting out. It was a tough lesson for him, because a pitch is not just about passion and enthusiasm. It's also about clarity and addressing the investors' concerns. And he wasn't the first guy to mess up a pitch. Remember Marco? The founder of a pre-prepared meal delivery business had a pitch to forget in the den. It was one of the worst pitches in the show's history, because he messed up big time. Right from the start, Marco claimed that his brand was trademarked. But oh dear, it didn't take long for Deborah to uncover the truth. He had only applied for a patent, and it hadn't even been confirmed yet. So that was his final mistake. I mean, when you're asking people to invest in your idea, honesty is the best policy. But Marco made the unfortunate mistake of trying to mislead the dragons, and that's a big no-no in the den. His credibility took a hit, and it's no surprise that he left the den without a deal. Trust is essential in business, and once that trust is broken, it's tough to recover. Hopefully, Marco learned a valuable lesson from this experience. Honesty and transparency are vital in a pitch. If you're not honest with your potential investors, you're setting yourself up for failure. But it's not always the contestants who make the show cringe for us. Sometimes it's the dragons themselves. So, there were some fantastic ideas from the entrepreneurs in one of the recent episodes, but all eyes turned away from them as Tucker and Steven got into a heated face-off. It all started when business hopeful Cassie was pitching her plastic-free toiletry company. Things took a stumble when she revealed that she had made losses on her eco-friendly brand, and the dragons couldn't help but interrupt each other, trying to dig deeper into the financials. Tucker, being his usual direct self, questioned Cassie about her plans for the $70,000 investment she was seeking. She mentioned getting a new business development manager on board, but then Steven, the founder of Social Chain, jumped in, suggesting she needed an experienced CEO to run the show. Well, that's when things got spicy. Tucker wasn't having it, and called out Steven for interrupting him while speaking. They exchanged some sharp words, and Steven even jokingly asked if Tucker had ever watched Dragon's Den before, given how things can get intense in the den. Twitter exploded with reactions, with people posting about the cringy clash between the two dragons. Some even joked that Steven and Tucker should get a room to sort out their differences. So there you have it. From the dragons fighting amongst themselves to a pitch that was about to make the dragons explode, those were Dragon Den's most cringeworthy moments.